boop here.
One, two,
Bup,
one,
bup,
two.
bup, bup.
Is this shit
Brick
on?
Squad.
What's up, buddy?
You know why I hollered Brick Squad?
Because it's fun.
Because these days everybody just shooting their shot and hitting bricks. Just bricking every shot. Everything goes up, everything's a brick.
Bricks on bricks on bricks.
Bricks on bricks on bricks.
That was fucked.
That was a bit fucked.
The whole program's cocked, bud. It really is. But you know what?
But you know what? We have sounders and we're recording a podcast, so it could
we're still
fucking be
breathing.
worse.
And we're still breathing.
We're
Goddammit.
still out here.
Right side of the dirt, they say.
Sure.
You know what that
I'm
means?
not sure who they is, but I can infer meaning from that.
You know, the proverbial, they.
What?
What?
Dude, have you watched?
Oh, man.
Have you been watching WWE without an audience?
I've seen some of the clips floating around.
Oh my god!
It is a sight to behold. I'll say that much. I'm to be honest, I'm shocked they're doing it because
It's so fucking good, dude.
it's so awkward, though.
I know, but it's like it's all the good stuff of wrestling because they're still like, it's still the same commitment and production value, and like they're still playing to the crowd even though there isn't one, and they set up like thousands of chairs and cut to crowd shots and shit.
Yeah, like I guess maybe that's like the weirdest part is like that they're being kind of self-aware about it.
Oh, very much so.
Like you kind of have to be, but I guess there's also part of me that's like, are they being self-aware about it because they didn't have the resources to be able to like rewrite it, so they're just like, fuck it, and imagine the audience.
No, because we're weeks into them doing it now. They're having fun with it for sure.
Yeah.
You gotta watch the Stone Cold 316 day bit from whatever that was 2 weeks ago. It's fucking phenomenal. It's like an Eric Andre sketch.
Is that the one where
it's the one I'm
he's
pulling
yelling,
all these sounders from, by the way?
Is that the one where he's like, give me a hell yeah, and like there's nobody in the audience, it just cuts to chairs, and he said, I said give me a hell yeah, and like there's still nobody in the audience.
Give me a
and then he yells
hell
it a third. Yeah, and then he yells it a third time, and there's like a random commentator up in the back row that's like, hell yeah!
Yeah!
Yes.
Yeah, that
yes,
guy.
I have
That's
both of those.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Dude,
Oh, man.
it's brilliant. It's just like wrestling, but 20% better now.
God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought that getting 50,000 people out of the audience was what it took
Is that what
to
we're
make
doing?
wrestling better?
Dude, we got this out of it,
Is that what we're doing?
and
Thank you very much for the participation. Tough ass crowd here.
Tough ass crowd here is good. We're going to use that every time we make a bad joke, which will be every 5 to 10 minutes.
absolutely.
Fantabulous.
I feel like I sort of jumped the gun on things that are bringing me joy lately, but you got any? I have to dig deep this week, but I know you got one at least.
gonna dig deep this week. Bringing me joy. All right, I got to be honest. Yesterday it was like 61 and sunny in Minneapolis.
Sure was.
And I have already like gotten my my like backyard umbrella and like patio table and chairs set up on my back patio.
It's raining motherfuckers.
It was not raining motherfuckers.
Okay, good.
It was raining nobody, thankfully. But that's good. I did say umbrella. You gotta bring out the raining motherfuckers.
Told you, there's never gonna be an appropriate time to use it, and I'm going to use it constantly.
It's great. Look, J-Rock is close to my heart for a variety of reasons. So I'll take J-Rock any given moment. No, but I sat outside with my computer on my patio, and it was 61 and sunny, and that brought me a small moment of joy this week. So a small, simple one, but that's what I'm going with.
Hell yeah, dude. You gotta take what you can get. I've been taking to just getting high and walking around my neighborhood with a basketball.
Dude, are you like, oh my God, are you like juking and like trying to like behind the back people and shit?
Well, I mean, there are no people, but yeah, I'm definitely just walking around my neighborhood working on my handles for sure.
You crossing cars out here? Just
squirrels and birds and shit.
Shaking bacon the fucking gutter.
The mailman.
The mailman. Fucking just through the legs right over the top of a fucking tree branch. Like, oh, what's up?
I'm trying. That's
you.
been doing a little bit for me. Fucking
That's
Tiger
legit.
King brought me a lot of joy.
Did it? Man, we don't have enough time on this show.
No, we're not going to do it because literally every other podcast is doing it this week. I'm sure you don't need our Tiger King content.
I'll just say this. I watched the whole thing and it brought me the opposite of joy. By the end of it, I was sadder at the human condition than when I started and was not a better person in any way, shape, or form for having ingested it. And I was sort of bummed I did it. So,
I mean, I can understand that response. I went in with the mindset of like, it was, it was going to be fun. So therefore it was fun, but I could totally understand seeing a bunch of miserable people being miserable and not having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That was sort of my take.
Yeah. Yeah. That's valid.
But hey, like you said, get it where you can get it. Get it where it fit in.
That was fucked.
That was a bit fucked.
That was me and Katie's conversation after the show finished.
Yeah, that was fucked. That was a bit fucked. And then you just kind of kept on going with your life,
Just keep it pushing. Well, shall we talk about some ancient mysteries?
Some ancient mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
I really like calling this topic an ancient mystery.
Mason and I got into some like somewhat modern, somewhat ancient internet mysteries. It was like a fun overlap of something that started as like a very localized mystery and turned into a broader internet mystery. And
that's very lit.
And now I'm like sort of obsessed with finding more of those things that like started as weird, isolated mysteries pre-internet and now have found a second life on the internet. It's like Ghost Rider kind of, or
huh? Do you remember the show Ghost Rider?
Yeah.
Where the fucking celestial being helped them solve mysteries.
Right.
It's like the celestial
ghost,
being
if you will.
is the internet. Yes. A ghost who also wrote that. It's like that, but we're the kids and the ghost is the internet. And
is that what we're doing?
That's what nailed it.
So anyway,
nailed it.
I came across the greatest mystery of our generation, or was reminded of the greatest mystery of our generation, the S, the universal S. Well, let me do it this way. Brian, did you and your classmates write that cool S on shit in elementary and middle school?
Absolutely.
Okay. The one with the three or two sets of three vertical lines, you connect them and make a cool S.
14 total lines. Is that what the number is? I think I read that somewhere. It's 14
6,
total, I think.
7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
What did you call that thing?
Okay, so I'm glad you're asking because I had the same question for you because I was like, in watching the video that you sent me and then in like researching it, I didn't realize it had so many names.
Yeah, I didn't either because I think we all had our little localized experience with it,
Right. We always called it the graffiti S. That was like the way I knew it.
See, we called it the cool S, which I guess is also one version that was popular.
Okay.
Some people called it a Superman or a pointy S or the Stussy S or the
Superman doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't look anything like the Superman logo. Like not even a little bit.
I mean, they're both the letter S.
I was going to say, but that's literally where it stops, is in that pretty rudimentary fact.
It's also sometimes called the Skater S, Surfer S, Stoner S, Gangster S, Cool S, or Fancy S. I guess if you don't know what we're talking about, Google any of those things and you'll find it. Yeah, right. So I and you, and I'm assuming many other people, drew this thing on like the back of every math assignment and in the margins of every textbook in the 90s and early 2000s.
I remember people doing it like almost like meditatively, like just like one after the next.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like just like filling pages with them, or like big, small, medium, just like over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. What's weird is that it was so universal and no one seems to know where it came from or what it is or why we all knew how to draw it by the time we finished middle school.
Right.
So there are some Reddit threads on a couple different subreddits about like, what is this and what did you call it and where did it come from? And I found a bunch of different possible explanations. But before that, I found like a way, I didn't realize that this existed in as broad of a way as it did. So if you scroll through those threads, there's an unresolved mysteries post subreddit from 2017. And in that, somebody said it was ever present in the UK. I drew it in the early 80s. I'm in Australia, and it was popular here too when I was in primary and middle school in the late 90s, early 2000s. I started drawing this when I was in 5th grade in 1980. I saw this in a 4chan thread about 6 or 7 years ago. I was visiting my dad at the time and showed it to him. He said they drew it when he was a kid in the late 50s and early 60s. So we've got this thing going back to 50s or 60s and all over the US, Europe, and Australia, at least, according to just browsing Reddit.
The thing that I find most fascinating about its pervasiveness is that there isn't like, well, I'm sure we'll get into this, but like there isn't like like an institutional reason for its existence, you know?
Right. I mean,
like,
I think that's the mystery is
like
why?
cursive. We all got taught cursive, and the reason that cursive stayed alive isn't because like we all just like osmosis, like learned cursive from each other or from the universe. It's because there was like a fucking class and you got taught cursive and you learned it.
Right.
But there is not
we can all
class.
trace back to why we know how to write in cursive or like
right.
did at one point.
Right. But this graffiti S, this cool S is not like part of any class or like learning. You're not
right.
You're not getting this from a specific, like, oh, yeah, when you're in 4th grade, everybody takes the cool S class. Like,
exactly.
That doesn't happen.
So I was sitting in my living room last night reading about this shit, and I showed an image of it to my wife. I was like, did you draw this thing? And of course she did. And I asked her why, if she remembered why or like how she started or like learned about it. And she just said, because I loved graph paper.
Oh,
and it was
first of all, that is the most on brand sentence your wife has ever said in her whole life.
Yep. But it makes sense. It's like something that you can easily draw on graph paper. And like, that was a very specific time in our development where we had regular access to graph paper.
Right. Since we don't
browsing through a couple other Reddit threads, there's one from the Reddit Bureau of Investigation, which is a fun subreddit to browse if you're bored.
Sure.
And some possible explanations and people's interactions with it. One person said, I went to middle school in Bulgaria And remember that we used to do something very similar, which is weird because Bulgarians use the Cyrillic alphabet, and there is no S in the Cyrillic alphabet. At least there isn't a letter form that looks like an S.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody said the universal S is just the icon for the server software that runs the simulation of this universe. It's embedded in the subconscious mind of all living things and occasionally shows up as an Easter egg from the developers.
Right.
So, and then there's this, did you watch that, what's the fucking guy with the YouTube video?
Is it like
Liamini
or
Luigi?
Luigi?
Lamino? I don't know.
Lamino?
Yeah, hold on, what the fuck?
Lemino?
Yeah, that guy.
Lemmino.
Lamino. We'll go with Lamino.
Lamino. He calls his channel Documentaries and lists videos narrated by a 20-something Swedish guy.
Perfect. Yeah, so he did a very like a years long deep dive on this, and if you want a like 20-minute really good primer of the whole thing, he has a video called "The Universal S" on YouTube.
That dude got like incepted by this concept.
Yeah, his channel is really good though. Like it's not just
no, it's great. I just mean like he went down the rabbit hole with this whole phenomenon in a very fantastic way, and I highly recommend it.
So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes up in there, including I don't know if it's through there or maybe through one of these Reddit threads, but somebody said, yeah, it must have been one of the Reddit threads. I was thinking the same thing about another early 90s thing, and all kids across the U.S. had our Nintendos, and we all passed along the wisdom to each other that blowing in the cartridge would somehow get the game to work. Did you have a Nintendo, and were you familiar with this technique?
I had a 64, and we for sure did it with the 64. The Nintendo 64 was the first game console I ever had.
Got it.
And we for sure blew in the cartridges.
So that got me thinking of like how information moved throughout, specifically kids who like shouldn't really have access to other kids outside of their immediate community. Well, and yet somehow we all had like some of these very specific common experiences.
And that's the thing that I definitely don't understand about this is we're talking about a thing that is like cross-continental, right? Like
yeah. So
over many decades previous to the internet existing. Like when we were kids, when we were younger, when you were in school, because that's the other thing that's weird, right? Is like you played with the kids in your neighborhood, but based on the way that like literal districting works, there's like a 99% chance that all the kids you fucking hung out with in your neighborhood also went to the same school as you.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, people had like cousins and shit, or like, you know, like kids with divorced parents would maybe like, you know, be one place on the weekend and one place, you know, during the week or whatever. But like generally speaking, you weren't like getting hella information from the outside world of your school.
Yeah. And
you know?
I guess that's my point is like, how did this become so ubiquitous, even though we weren't talking to people outside, for the most part, outside of like our tiny little bubbles? Like you and I grew up 10 miles away from each other.
Right.
And we weren't interacting. People who grew up in Roseville didn't really interact with kids in South Minneapolis.
Right.
Even though we were like maybe 10 miles away from each other, you know?
Right. Right.
And yet this thing, that's why I brought up the Lamino video a second ago. He found, at least from message boards and like self-reporting, people in North America, South America, Europe, Russia, Asia, and Australia who claim to be familiar with this thing and have drawn it at some point in their lives.
See, and here's the crazy thing, bro. And like, you know what? Maybe like hot take of the episode, but here it is, man. it's not even that cool of an S. You know? Like
Fair.
all things considered, like it'd be one thing if kids were running around being like, hey, yo, I figured out how you can print your own money. And all you got to do is like these like 5 things and you print your own money. Kids will be like, damn, I'm going to tell literally everybody I know about this and they're going to take this and share it with other people because that shit is super duper cool and very interesting and valuable to me.
Instead, we had the same reaction to the letter S.
To 14 lines that was like, it's a S but with corners. Like, it's not that cool. I mean, like
the first kid whose friend told him about this should have just been like,
What the fuck are you going on about?
Okay, man, like, yeah, you made a shape, bro. Like, because that's the thing that makes the least sense to me is it would be one thing if there was some additional inherent value to this specific design. And
no, it's just like a shitty meme.
Yeah, like, and that's the weird part about it is it's like, what's the value in, like, what's the value in that? You know, I don't know.
There is none.
It's weird.
There's none, and I think that's probably why it only happened with kids, though, right? Because we don't have nothing we did as kids had like quote unquote value in any like monetary or productive sense, you know? Yeah. We had all the time in the world to learn how to draw a stupid S and teach our friends about it.
Right.
What I also find weird is that there was not a name for it. Like we all knew how to do this thing.
I mean, I sort of disagree. Like there were 1,000 names for it, I guess.
Well, right. But like
you're saying there was not a universal name for it.
Yeah, like there's very specific information in terms of like what it is and how to draw it was transferred flawlessly to every continent. And yet we didn't call it the same thing or anything or like, you know, like you and I, again, we were 10 miles away from each other calling it 2 different things.
Right.
But drawing the exact same thing, and so were all of our friends, and so were kids in Bulgaria, apparently.
Right.
Going back to the 40s.
No fucking sense, dude.
Again, from this fucking Lamino dude, he like found every instance of it on message boards that he could, and it was like 2,300 total instances or something.
I think it was 23,000.
Was it? Okay. Yeah, it was a shitload. That number makes more sense. And yeah, found every continent except Antarctica and made a graph of the like the time or like the era that people reported seeing it or drawing it in. And there was a peak sort of in the 90s, but it went all the way back to I think the 40s. And then you had people reporting, either teachers or like young people now reporting like, oh yeah, that's definitely still happening in schools.
Which is, again, like, why?
Right. Especially now, like post internet. When
you got so many cooler things to draw, dude, like go draw Pokemon or whatever.
It's kind of crazy to me that even just like drawing as sort of an idle activity is still pervasive. Like
well, I mean, that makes sense mostly because for a significant portion of your day, you've only got access to paper and pen. Like if you pick your phone up,
that's not really true anymore, though.
But if you pick your phone up in class, your teacher's going to beat that ass.
Also, like plenty of schools now, kids all have their own laptop or iPad or something.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're supposed to be locked down, but I know a lot of kids know how to get around that.
Yeah, as a teacher, I can tell you that they are not. They are absolutely not. I used to like, we would have, whatever restrictive software on them. And I would give it to one kid in particular in my classes to be like, hey man, get to the internet or like get to a site that you're probably not supposed to. And every time, no matter what we did, within 30 seconds, he would hand it back to me with either like a browser open or some website that was supposed to be blocked.
And you just like throw your head in your hand like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like
these
what's
kids.
the point? No matter, we could
Right.
spend years and millions of dollars on this, and fucking Brad is going to figure out how to crack it in 30 seconds.
It's like the war on drugs.
Sure.
Sorry, keep going. Just pretend I didn't say it. Just keep going.
So I guess we can talk a little bit about where the fuck this thing may have originated.
Yes.
Unless there's any other sort of background, where is it info you wanted to cover?
Wait, say that again?
Unless there's any like sort of base level, what is it, where was it, when was it info you wanted to cover?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Like, the reality is it was pretty much everywhere. It appears to have been around for, you found earlier evidence than I did. The earliest I heard somebody say was like the 60s. But like
Evidence is maybe not the right word. Anecdotal evidence, I suppose.
That someone was like, we were drawing this when we were kids, and they were kids in the 50s or 40s
Or like
and 50s.
the dude in the Reddit thread who said, I showed it to my dad and he said that they used to draw it in the 50s. You know, like that's not evidence,
Sure.
But none of this
But
shit
it's
really
anecdotal
is.
evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have no business, like, I have no business denying that, because plenty of people like were like, yeah, we drew that when we were kids. And I'm like, yeah, I drew that when I was a kid. So who am I to like,
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
and at the
Like,
end of the day, all of this shit is 1,000% inconsequential. So I'm willing to go with it.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You have no reason to lie about the fact that you were drawing it when you were a kid.
Well, and if
know?
you do, I don't care also.
This too. Yes, this too.
So the one explanation that I guess thought was the explanation, or what I heard as a kid, was that it's the Stussy logo, as in the clothing brand.
Oh, you heard that when you were a kid?
Yeah, I remember like some kids, I remember kids calling it like the Stussy S.
Okay. See, I don't have any memory of that.
And I think
I saw that in the research, but I don't have any memory of
I
that.
can't tell you. I think it was maybe like my older brother and his friends
Mm,
called it that. And we
Got it.
he's like 4.5 years older than me.
got it.
And I think we called it the cool S, but I don't remember exactly where or when I heard that, but that when I saw that as an explanation, I was like, oh yeah, I remember people calling it that.
Hmm.
So
The funny thing about that like it seems to be the case is just that there's literally zero evidence, including, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, including from like the mouth of Stussy themselves. They're like, no, we never used that as a logo.
right, that is true. And someone at Vice, I'll find the article in a minute, but there was a writer at Vice who wrote 2 articles, like one originally and then a follow-up, about trying to track down the origin of this.
Oh, word. That's interesting.
And they're not great articles, but he did a little bit of work, which is sort of the Vice way, it seems.
Dun-dun-dun.
Just do barely enough to make a post about it and then have other people do shit for you.
Well, but you know why though? It's because I heard Vice barely paid their writers. So if I was one of their writers, that's probably what I would have done
Dude,
too.
have you
Like,
been-
you're giving me
have you been
$20 for 800 words?
Have you been listening to that podcast about the Vice music editor who's going to jail for smuggling coke into Australia?
No, but you should send it to me
Oh,
because
fuck, it's fun. I mean, it's not fun, but it's wild.
I almost tweeted this today. I was like, I get that the world is burning down around us and there's like a lot of really crazy shit going on. But I think the most like frustrating part about that has been that all of my media that I usually enjoy.
Oh, yeah, fuck it. No, I can't listen to any of that shit, dude. I'm listening to my...
talking about coronavirus instead of like, I'm like, no, that's literally the last thing I need you to do right now, because I just want the world to keep going on like normal in some small fashion of my life. And instead I'm like, oh, I'm going to go listen to Reply All. Nope. I'm going to go listen to Radiolab. Nope. Oh, I'm going to go listen. It's just like everybody is just like, here's all the shit about coronavirus. I'm like, yo, I already have 10,000 pounds of that entering my brain on a day-to-day basis. I do not need y'all to be doing this too. I would rather you just did different things.
Okay, 2 suggestions for you.
Yes.
Have you ever fucked with Hello from the Magic Tavern?
I have not.
It is a just stupid, fun, goofy, improvised sci-fi fantasy podcast with some improvisers from Chicago.
Including friend of the show who's been on the show before, Nick Mested, right? Wasn't Nick on an episode?
He's guested a couple times. He's not like one of the regulars, but yes.
Yes.
And
Hello from the. I'm literally writing this down as we do this.
And they have like,
because I really need this right now.
They've been
Hello
going
from the Magic Tavern.
They've been going for 5 years weekly, so you have like 250 back episodes to go through.
That is another thing I need. Is I need a thing that I could like go start at the beginning from.
It's good at the beginning and then gets better as they go. And it's like sort of, you would benefit from listening to it in order, but you wouldn't have to.
Sure.
You would just like miss some inside jokes and shit.
Sure.
And then this one, I Googled Vice podcast Coke Australia because I couldn't remember the name of it. And it's called,
Nailed it.
It's called Cool Mules.
Cool Mules.
Yep.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's very on point though.
Okay.
The about the show says when Vice music editor Slava P reached out to young journalists with job offers, they thought it was about freelance writing. Instead, he asked them to smuggle $20 million worth of coke into Australia.
Damn.
Yep. It launched the beginning of this month. I think there are like 4 or 5 episodes out so far. It's not fun, but it's like a good escape distraction from this bullshit.
Okay, lit. I'm in.
Hello from Magic Tavern is just like good, stupid, dumb fun.
That's what I need. And I need something that I can mainline too, because that's the other thing too, is like when you're not doing anything, nothing comes out fast enough.
I mean, you've got 200 hours of that shit to go through. Plus, I can hook you up with a Stitcher premium membership, and then you have 200 more hours of paid content to go through.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Real quick, let's take a break to talk about BetterHelp. Is there something that interferes with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? If so, BetterHelp Online Counseling is there for you. You can connect with a professional counselor in a safe and private online environment, and it's super convenient. You can get help on your own time and at your own pace by scheduling secure video or phone sessions, plus chat or text with your therapist whenever you need to. BetterHelp has licensed professional counselors who are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, anger, family concerns, LGBT matters, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and anything you share is totally confidential. So right now, if you go to betterhelp.com and use promo code WHATIF, you can get 10% off your first month. So get started today by going to betterhelp.com/whatif or use promo code WHATIF for 10% off your first month. Let's get back to the weird shit.
Anyway.
Yeah, what the fuck were we talking about?
You were asking about the Vice show, I think. Before.
This Vice guy tried to track down the origin of the S. And
that's it.
He called Stussy and talked to one of their PR people named Emmy Coates, who has worked with Stussy since 85 when they started.
Okay.
And she said, quote, "This is not an original Stussy logo. I get asked this a lot, but people have been drawing the S long before Stussy was established. People just assumed it was Stussy and it's sort of spread from there."
Got it.
So 2 things. We have someone who's worked at Stussy since they started saying, no, this is never not our logo and never has been. And also they started in 85 and we have people claiming to have seen this thing as far back as the 40s and 50s.
It makes sense though, because there's a degree there where you go, kids are the ones that are not kids, but like kids are the ones who are like primarily drawing this, right? Like we're talking, I don't know, like, do you remember how old you were? I remember it being like roughly middle school age.
I was going to say like late elementary to middle school, probably 5th through 8th grade or so. So like that 11 to 14 or something.
Right. So you go like, that's roughly the age of the kids. Stussy is like a kid skater brand that leads with an S.
It's their
like
demographic for sure.
Right. Like it's their demographic and they lead with an S, and like it's pretty easy to see how that could be like, that's like the like that's what we say it means. It's the Stussy S.
Well, and they do have some variations of their logo that look sort of similar to it.
Sure.
But no one has ever produced a photo of or an actual like piece of their clothing that has that exact S on it. They just have some like stylized S's because their logo is an S.
Right.
So according to them, it's not them. And the timeline doesn't really work out anyway.
Yeah. And also if they say it's not them, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like they'd want to own it if it was. They'd probably want to copyright it if it was.
Yeah, exactly. He also reached out to Suzuki, the car company, because their logo is also pretty similar to this S.
See, the Lamino video said that too, and I looked at it and I was like, I mean, I don't know. It depends on what your definition of similar is. I feel like a stylized S that is angular.
And that's all they're saying.
Right, but like that, like, I don't know. That's not even, like, design-wise, it's not similar. There is not,
it's
like,
similar in that it's a angular stylized S.
But that's it, though.
Yeah,
like, it's... Right. Yeah, I guess I come from, like, a design background professionally, so I guess that's probably why I have more beef with that than maybe other people would, but I'm like, that's not the same. And, like, that would not hold up in a copyright case to say that, like, this is even like a deviation of that.
No, it's definitely not the same. I think people are looking for anything similar because there is no clear like path to finding the origin of this thing, right? So we're looking for like,
sure,
could it be a kid's variation of this thing, you know?
Sure.
Or like a sloppy reproduction that got passed down through decades of kid telephone to become this thing.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, this Vice author contacted Suzuki directly and talked to Lewis Croft, who is the Australian marketing manager for Suzuki. This must have been Vice Australia because they both times talked to the Australian version of these companies. But anyway, the marketing manager said, the drawing you sent me is not an earlier version of the Suzuki logo, nor is it our current official logo. This is the current Suzuki logo as it first appeared in 1958. So the timeline makes a little more sense for this one in that Suzuki was founded in 58 and have had the same logo since 1958.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look the same. And I don't know why kids all over the world would be drawing the logo of a Japanese auto brand.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even...
Like, when has Suzuki ever been cool with kids?
I can't even, like, speak to knowing what Suzuki was when I was a fucking fifth grader. You know what I mean?
Well, and when I was doing research for this episode, that was the first time I think I had seen their logo. Or, like, been consciously aware of what their logo was, you know?
Sure.
So if we were drawing that shit because of Suzuki, it was very indirectly. You know?
Yeah. And
we weren't just like,
that just feels so loose to me.
Yeah, no, it's not the answer.
Word.
We've got the Superman logo, which I agree with you is not an explanation.
Yeah.
Because kids also drew the Superman logo because it was cool because Superman is cool. This is not that at all.
Hella kids, I remember were rocking like Superman t-shirts back in the day. Yeah. And that's the thing that's so stupid about that is like I had a Superman t-shirt when I was a kid. I was a fucking comic book nerd, and that shit was cool. You get that shit from like Spencer's Gifts or fucking Target or whatever. But like the thing about that doesn't make any sense to me is like, why wouldn't you it's not like the Superman logo is crazy hard to draw. It's a diamond with an S inside of it. Like, it's not like...
And if it were a variation of it, wouldn't there be like multiple variations, not this one variation that then we all reproduced exactly.
Yeah, it's exactly. It would be like bad Superman logos, not like,
which I'm sure are a thing that kids draw, but they don't look like this.
But they don't look like a fucking stylized angular S. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, some of these explanations, like, low-key kind of fucking made me mad because I was just like, no, that's obviously not it. Like, why are people even suggesting that?
It's because people are reaching because there's not a clear answer, you know?
Yeah.
There are a million bands that have used some version of it, but they all seem to have happened after this S became popularized.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? That like people will, like people will adopt something that is common trope and pull it into like the world.
Yeah,
or pull it into their world.
I came across on Reddit 2 decent possible explanations, and I'm just gonna read them. They're a little bit long, but I think they're worth it. I'm gonna read them verbatim.
Yeah.
The first says, I've been researching this for a few years now, and I think I've come up with the most likely source for it. It's a matchstick puzzle. These have been around since ancient Greece, and they even have a subreddit here, if I recall correctly. They are simple puzzles that combine logic puzzles with physical puzzles. You're usually presented with a set of information that is technically correct, but the solution involves using the things that you were presented in strange or unorthodox ways. A classic example would be to present 3 vertical sticks and ask the question, without breaking any sticks, make 4. The solution is to tilt 2 of the matches to make an I and a V, the Roman numeral 4.
So this one I actually really liked because I remember this shit. I don't remember it specifically with like the S puzzle itself.
You remember this type of puzzle, though?
Yeah, this type of concept. And this was actually the first time where I was like, oh, this would kind of make sense to explain for like the ubiquity of this thing across continents, to be like, because remember how I was like, oh, there's no way that everyone learns this thing, but it's like, oh, well, if it was like a common logic puzzle.
Yeah.
That was being used to teach like logic and reasoning and like creative thinking in children, to go with these 6 lines, use 7 more to create an S, 7 more and only straight lines to create an S. Like that would make a lot of sense for kids being like, yo, I know how to draw an S. And the reason it would get shared from kid to kid would be, it would be like a riddle, right? It would be like, I know a thing you don't know.
Yep.
And I'm going to draw these 6 lines and go to you, kid. I mean, we used to do this shit all the time where it would be like, it'd be a little puzzle. Like somebody would draw this many dots and it would be like, what's the fewest amount of lines you can do to hit all the dots, or like, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like shit like that. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. That would make sense then if some kid learned this fucking 6-line riddle to create an S, that would spread, and that would spread in a way where I could see it making sense. But again, to your point, like, this shit happened way sooner than we have any documentation of that puzzle existing in the world.
Yeah. So this Reddit poster, they keep going a little bit, and I think it helps fill in some more of those questions too. They say, I believe the Stussy S or pointed S is a variation on this idea since it fits into the framework of those puzzles. The actual source of this puzzle being widespread in the United States is that these kinds of simple puzzles were very common in scouting, which means that they would have been widespread in the pre-electronic age, and it's a simple enough trick that once one kid has it figured out, it would spread quickly, like you just said. Also, as far as information goes, little tricks like this are very easy for older kids, siblings, or parents to show young kids as a thing just to distract them or keep them busy, i.e. the rubber pencil trick or other ways to perform simple optical illusions.
Sure.
It's also not copyrighted or owned by anyone, which means that it would be easy to include in activity books or activity sheets. I learned it from a magazine like Highlights or Boy's Life when I was a kid, and my friend learned it from an issue of, I believe, American Girl magazine. It has all the perfect elements for a meme. It's simple but interesting, easily repeatable. Anybody can do it, and it isn't copyrighted.
Yep.
So the problem with that is no one is able to produce one of those magazines that includes this quote unquote puzzle.
Right. It's like I remember it from, but nobody can actually show the from that they remember it from.
Right. So this person lists 3 different magazines. Well, no one can find an episode or an issue of any of those magazines that includes this. So.
And that's problematic in its own right because a lot of those companies have back issues or have at least digitized their back catalogs and would be able to reproduce that.
Yes. There was another Reddit post, I think in that same thread, where someone said this symbol is actually from a puzzle book released by Scholastic Books. So we have now a 4th publication. The original puzzle simply showed 2 rows of 3 vertical lines, and the challenge was to turn them into the letter S by adding 8 more straight lines. So what you were suggesting earlier.
Yep.
Looking at the finished product, it seems easy, but when faced with the 2 rows of 3 lines, it was quite challenging. Once it was figured out, it became something to doodle. It became widespread because everybody used to get those Scholastic books in elementary school.
Right.
So our guy Lemino, whatever, actually messaged this person on Reddit and said, "Hey, do you know what Scholastic book that was?" And they responded and said, Scholastic used to publish a monthly magazine called Dynamite. It was a monthly magazine geared towards children that ran for 9 years and 112 issues. Blah, 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 blah. It talks about this matchstick puzzle. So Lemino tracked down like dozens of issues of this Dynamite magazine from Scholastic and was unable to find this puzzle in any of them. And this Dynamite was first published in 1974. So it wouldn't explain people being familiar with it in the 50s, 60s, and at least one person reporting it in the 40s.
Right. Right. It's like, it's one of those, see, and that's the interesting thing is like with a lot of this shit, I feel like it's like you're finding, you're just finding like another breadcrumb, right?
We're finding like one branch of the tree, but not the trunk.
Right. You're just like, okay, cool. That gets us further back,
or
but
like,
that's not,
or that's how it spread to this group in this era, but it's not the origin of it.
Right. Right.
The closest thing I've found to an origin is from that same YouTube video. He tracks it down to graffiti.
Which is funny because, you know, like I watched the Lemino video.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking the whole time, I was like, where's the graffiti tie-in? Because we always called it the graffiti ass. Mm-hmm. And so I remember thinking like this originated in graffiti somehow. And I was like waiting for that tie-in the whole time. And he's like, and then I discovered, and I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for that to be the case.
It's a hard, it's a hard thing to document though. You know, like,
100%.
Graffiti is temporary typically and location specific, and no one takes credit for it a lot. And like, especially early on, it wasn't documented in photographs very often. And if it was, like, those photos probably aren't on the internet. They would be in books and stuff, if anywhere.
Right, right.
So he originally tracked it down to a Jean-Michel Basquiat painting from 1982 called Olive Oil. And in the corner of this painting is mostly text with some arrows and stuff. But in the upper left corner of this painting, there is the S. And then next to it, an equals sign and classic S of graph.
Which is interesting.
Implying that he discovered it through graffiti, and a lot of Basquiat's work was informed by 70s and 80s New York graffiti.
And also, like, it's interesting to me that Basquiat refers to it as the classic S of graffiti. As in, like, I'm using it here, but, I mean, well, Basquiat died pretty young, but whenever that painting was, like...
The painting was from 1982.
82. And he would have been, what, 20, I don't know, mid-20s at the time?
I don't know, but yeah, somewhere in there.
I think probably mid-20s. I can't remember. I think he died when he was like...
He was born in 60, so he would have been 22.
22, okay. So for him to identify that as a classic graffiti it leads me to believe that there was like a significantly longer tradition of that.
Yeah, for sure.
In his world, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So Lamino was able to trace it back farther, for sure, to 1973 at least. And there's a book called The Faith of Graffiti. It's a photo book by a photographer named John Naar, Naar. And it appears in a photograph in that book that was published in 73. So that photo is from, at the latest, 1973.
Yep.
And then there's at least one photo taken by someone named Howard Gribble. And he took graffiti photos, and there's one from, it's like 1970 or 71. They're on Flickr. It's a set called The Golden Age of Gang Graffiti. And it's a bunch of 67 photos of early 70s gang graffiti. And in one of them, there is this S, and it's, well, in a couple of them there's this S, but there's one specifically where it's faded relative to the other stuff around it. So it's like, it's a wall that has had many layers of graffiti on it over time.
Yep.
And this S is like the most faded layer.
Yep.
Meaning that, I don't know, we could guess that it's probably been there a while.
Right. Right.
And these photos were from like 70 to 72, I think. So we could, I mean, at the latest, it's 72, but it probably like late 60s to maybe 1970. We've got this thing showing up in graffiti.
Which is good, which is all good and fine. And like, I appreciate the road that like Lamino goes down, and like, and Basquiat saying this is a classic graffiti-esque, being like, okay, that's where like maybe it was popularized or used a lot. But the thing that's so weird and like doesn't make sense to me still is if there are dads being like, yeah, we were drawing that in the 40s, like graffiti wasn't even really a thing in the 40s.
Right.
So
like graffiti may still not have been the origin of it. It just, again, helped to popularize it.
And that's what I mean by like, it just feels like each of these things is collecting a breadcrumb down a road, but like it just is a breadcrumb to the next breadcrumb. It's not.
Yeah.
You're never like, oh, here's where it all started. It's just like, no, that's just another piece of this weird fucking puzzle.
So the photo, I'll link to it. The photo that specifically features this S in like the same version that you see it now is called Avenues. And there's an S, and then next to it is like maybe an O, sort of in a similar style.
Word.
And below it, there's a tag dated 1970 that looks significantly darker than this very faded S above it. So, I mean, we're looking at late 60s, which then to me gets to the like, okay, if this was being used in gang graffiti in the 60s,
yep,
it probably like, this photo from 1970 probably wasn't the very first one, right? It'd probably already been around for a while. This is just
for sure
the longest or the earliest surviving photograph we have of it.
For sure.
And then I think we're like within the range of that, like, oh, my dad says he saw it in the 50s and 60s. Like,
right.
We're probably in the margin of error for anecdotal 60-year-old memories of things.
Right. Being like, oh, maybe I saw that on a college notebook, but I'm remembering it earlier than it was or whatever.
Yeah. If we want to go a little bit farther out there, though, into like some really ancient shit, there is a publication from 1890 called Mechanical Graphics by Frederick Wilson. And I don't exactly know what the purpose of it was, but there are like font sheets basically in it.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I understand it. Is it's like font templates, almost like traceable font templates.
Yeah, and this very, if not the same, like very similar stylization of the letter S appears in this publication from 1890. Amongst, like, as part of a typeset, I guess. And someone suggested in one of those Reddit threads a painting from 1533 called The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein the Younger. And it's two guys in very fancy robes and coats standing next to a table with some instruments and globes and scientific shit on it. And there's like a tapestry on the table. And in the middle of this tapestry is that letter S. Like the exact stylization of it that we're all familiar with.
And when is that one from?
1533.
Damn.
Have you seen that one?
No, I have not. How do I look that up?
Google The Ambassadors and then Hans Holbein, Holbein. It's Google Google Arts and Culture has a pretty good scan of it.
Oh, this is the
You're gonna have to zoom in maybe, but it's like right in the center of the frame.
This is the one where it's got the directional skull thing, right? Like if you look at it from
Directional skull thing?
Yeah, that weird blob in the middle of their feet.
Oh yeah,
is
what is that?
So it was like it's like a painter's trick. If you look at it from a specific direction, that's a skull, like a
What the fuck? Hans was on some wild shit.
Yeah, for real. What's the fucking word I'm looking for? It's like a perspective. Yeah, it's a perspective painting. So if you look at them straight on, it looks like a weird blob across the screen. But if you look at the painting shifted like 45 degrees to the left, it's like a human skull painted on the floor.
What the fuck are you doing here, little buddy?
Yeah, bruv. Yeah, bruv. I remember this painting. I think I saw this painting at the National Gallery.
Huh.
I think it's in DC.
Maybe.
Nope. London.
Lies. You sit on a throne of lies.
I do sit on a throne of lies. I have not seen this painting. But I remember this painting because I remember the skull, and I remember talking about like the anamorphic fucking nature of the skull itself. Okay.
So in conclusion,
sorry, got derailed. Where's the fucking ass here?
Oh, you didn't find it yet? It's on so if you look at the table in between the two of them, it's kind of hard. You gotta zoom in, but okay. So you see like the guy with the pink shirt.
Oh, yep.
It's like just to the right of his hand.
Got it. Yeah.
Sideways.
Yeah. It's like,
and it's weird.
It's on the tapestry draped over the table that they're like leaning against. Or whatever.
Yeah, and the rest of the patterning on the tapestry is like fairly consistent. And this is
not that at all.
No, but this is just like a one-off in the middle. It doesn't even appear to be part of the pattern on this tapestry. Right. It's very weird.
Right.
But Hans was clearly on some other shit with his directional skull paintings in the 1500s.
Preach. Okay, so let me throw a thing out there.
Yeah, because I'm out of fucking ideas at this point. None of this like seems like the origin of it to me. It just all seems like later iterations that helped to popularize it.
Well, okay, let me say two things. Let me say one thing first. I have a thought about origin, and then I have another thought that goes beyond origin, which is more of a question. But the question I have is, I understand the sentiment of like driving towards the origin, like where did this begin?
Yeah.
But I also feel like the interesting thing about this one specifically is the origin doesn't actually tell us anything about its current ubiquity. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes,
even
although I feel like we've found, or we have an idea of some of the ways in which it may have been popularized later. Like graffiti definitely helped. And then
graffiti helped, but graffiti doesn't have anything to do with like we called it the graffiti-esque, but like we weren't seeing a lot of graffiti that contained it, you know? Like it's not like you saw it in graffiti. It was just this shape that kids at a certain age were drawing and continue to draw. And that's the weirdest part to me is there still isn't, even if we find like the thing that made it most popular or the place that it like really truly originally originated from, it doesn't tell us why it is on 6 continents and 100 countries or 150 countries and particularly concentrated in this specific age group. You know, like that's the weirdest thing to me.
There doesn't have to be one explanation for that either, though, you know?
No, there doesn't have to be one explanation for it. But I guess what I'm saying is, even if there are things that popularize it, like why this shape and why did it keep going? It's a doodle. I mean, it's all it is. It's a doodle. It's a little doodly ass puzzle. I guess kids doodle nonstop. Like, why has this one continued and continued and continued to survive? Like, I think looking at the origin or looking at things that may or may not have popularized it still doesn't really get to the crux for me personally of explaining why it continues to be as ubiquitous as it was for so long.
Just a perfect meme format.
I mean, I guess, but like that, but that's what it is it's just like, why, what is, that's what I'm saying. It's not even that cool of an S. Like it's, I get it. It's an interesting shape, but it's not even that cool.
But it's the perfect balance. If it were cooler, maybe it would be harder to make or harder to remember. You know, it's
too cool.
Right. It's
whoa. Too cool.
Well, you know, it might be more complicated, right? It's sort of cool, but it's very simple. And it's like, it's cool until you know about it. And then once you know about it, you can be cool by showing another kid who doesn't know about it.
Right.
I don't know. What was your part 2 of that?
Totally. So, and then the part 2, I guess, was about the origin. So I had this thought where I was like, I don't know nearly enough about the the invention of the written language or of the printing press as a whole. I'd be fascinated by it. Actually, if anybody has like a book to read about like the printing press, I feel like that would be a super fascinating thing. You should hit us up and tell me about it. But I had the thought as I was looking into this, like, is there a possibility that at a certain point in time, going back to the 1800s mechanical font chart thing that you were talking about. What was that guy's name again? Or what was that from again?
Hold on. That was Mechanical Graphics by Frederick Wilson.
That's the one. Does it make sense that there was a specific time in which it was valuable to be able to create like an entire alphabet, like English alphabet font using only straight lines?
But then why the S? Wouldn't we have every other letter also?
So yes, for sure. And that's the first thought that I had related to that thought. But I don't know, like, I don't know why some things survive and others don't. But part of me wonders if like going to this ambassador's painting, like, is it possible that there is some sort of, I don't know, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but like, is there some sort of S-related thing related to that thing where it's like a coat of arms or a family heirloom or I don't know. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, could that have been an origin where there was a point where a font required only straight lines and it was like, how do we get an S out of straight lines? And that was it. And people were like, that's a fun way to draw an S using only straight lines.
That shit's tight.
And it just, you know, like it's less cool than like a Q would just be like a rectangle with a tail, or like, you know, like, I don't know, like, was
That
this
cue's
just a
not hard.
particular? Yeah, like, is this just
That
a
cue's
particularly
soft, bro. Show
interesting
me an
way?
S.
All right, now we're talking. This that good shit.
That's that gangster ass.
But like, just going back to, and again, like, this is what I mean is I don't think this solves for anything, but part of me wonders if, you know, we're talking about going back super far, this painting's from the 1500s. Was there a period of time where the printing press benefited by being like, hey, we can create all kinds of letters, or like, even like with a fucking chisel, you know, we can chisel the alphabet using this 1 inch or 2 inch wide chisel. And this is how we used to do our S's. Like, I don't know. I wonder if that could get us somewhere to the, you know, to the origin.
Many styles, bro.
Many styles, bro. Styles P, bro.
Well, once again, we've solved nothing, but we had some fun along the way.
Well, that's the one. We want to know from y'all, did you do it? What'd you call it? Send us an email. It's hi@whatifpodcast.com. If you want to leave us a voicemail, it's 612-246-4614.
Thank you very much for the participation.
Yes, we appreciate your participation. Thank you guys for listening and supporting the show. If you want to leave us an iTunes review, we're getting really close to 500 iTunes reviews. When we hit 500, we're going to do another live episode. Spencer and I are going to hang out with you guys. We'll do a live episode of the show, answer questions, hang out with everybody. So go leave us an iTunes review if you feel so inclined, and we'll hang out on a live show very soon. Stay safe, stay sane. We'll talk to you guys soon.
We ain't down with killing, we down with chilling. Peace.